Hello, Mr. G here with a very short lesson to show you how to operate this applet. It is a sandbox to play with vectors. So we're going to go over the tools that you have available, and then you can recreate the example here in any activity. So first, the tools that we have are the arrow tool or the move tool. This is a good place to refer to every time we do something. So every time we do an operation or something, come back here. This is kind of your home base. Then I'm going to show you two ways where that you can create vectors. The first one that is super friendly is just by clicking on the vector button. So let's go here, and when we click on the origin, for example, and then create an arrow, I am literally creating a vector. And GeoGebra creates the vector. It gives it to me in proper vector notation. It also gives me the points. I'm going to hide the points here because I'm interested in seeing the vector. So I have vector u here, and I have the components of this vector here that are 9.16 and 6.71. I can manipulate this vector by clicking on the move tool, and this of course is dynamic. You can see what is happening with the components of my vector as I play with it. So pretty cool, pretty visual. And that is one way to create vectors. So I'm going to create this vector 10, 5. So the component on the x-axis is 10, plus 10. The component on the y-axis is plus 5. And I'm going to change the color of this vector. It's already selected because I was playing with the arrow key. So I'm going to come here and actually it was not selected. Now it's selected. You can see it's a bit highlighted. I'm going to change the color of this vector to red. So, and then I can click here again to hide that toolbox. So I have this vector u with components 10, 5. And at some point, I'm going to calculate magnitude of the vector. But for now, I'm going to show you the second way you can input vectors. I'm going to enter a vector here on the input box, and I'm going to call it V, and I'm going to enter it as coordinates first, and then GeoGebra knows that I'm entering a vector. So I'm going to create a vector with the components -6, 8. And there it is. When I press enter, I get the notation here on the algebra portion, and I can see the vector here. Pretty cool. Similarly, I'm going to select the vector, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to change the color to blue just to illustrate something. And something interesting happened. Accidentally, I moved the vector. But guess what? I can move it back. The vector doesn't change because it will have the same components. Take a look here. So this allows me to play with it. So I can put it back in the origin. So I have the two vectors, one that I created graphically with my vector tool, one that I created via the input box. One of the coolest things about this is that literally I can do operations on these vectors. So I'm going to do the addition of vector u plus v, the vectorial addition. So all I have to do is go to the input and literally add them. And when I press enter, I have a vector w that is the addition of u plus v. So I'm going to select this vector, and then I'm going to change its color to green just to indicate that is the addition of u plus v. And something interesting or cool for you to explore. We also have learned that one strategy to add vectors is to place one at the tail of one at the arrowhead of the other vector. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to move vector v to place the tail at the arrowhead of vector u, and this of course provides me with vector w automatically. So it's very, very cool that I can also see this. I have the components of my addition vector, which are 4, 13, no matter where the vector is. So I can place it back here and I have my addition. And I can also, of course, do the subtraction if I wanted to do this. So I'm going to do the subtraction of vector u minus vector v using that input box, u minus v, and press enter. And now I have my vector that is the subtraction of these two. It's showing here. Um, it's showing as a vector A for some reason. That's okay. And it's showing in black. So I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing. I'm going to change the color of these vector, the outcome of this vector. This time I'm going to choose this purple color. And there is the vector A, which represents u minus v. Minus v would be the vector that goes in the opposite direction of v. So I'm going to do something a bit interesting here. I can change v, or I can enter another vector that is the opposite of v to change its direction. So actually, I'm going to leave that for you to play with. So that is a beautiful way for us to play with vectors, to get the idea of the components. Now, of course, some of you may be wondering, yes, but what about the magnitude? So let's take a look at our vector W, that was the addition of these two, of magnitude 4, of components 4 and 13. So keep in mind those components. I'm going to hide this by coming here, and I'm going to use the input box, and we know to calculate the magnitude of, I have to add the components because the vector would be the hypotenuse of this right angle triangle. So all I have to do is the square root of 4 squared plus 13 squared. When I press enter, I'm going to get a number that GeoGebra calculates. So now I have my magnitude for vector W, which is the addition of u and v. And the last thing I'm going to show you is how to find the angles for the vectors with the x-axis, and also we can find the angles between the vectors. So first I'm going to put a point somewhere on the x-axis, say here, so that I can easily create a measure an angle from this point. Then I'm going to use the angle tool that I have here. And to measure the angle, I'm going to go from that point that I created. Let's say I want to measure the angle in vector u. I will click on the point, on the origin, and then on the arrowhead, and I have the angle for this vector. And pretty cool. I can make it visible or invisible. I can change its color to red so it's consistent with what I have. But I guess I have to select it first. I'm going to select it, and there it is. I'm going to make it red, and we can see that's the angle that we have for vector u with the x-axis. Pretty cool. I can also find the angle between two vectors, and that I can do also with the angle tool. So let's say I want to find the angle between vectors u and w. I measure my angle, and this time I can probably click on just one vector and then the other, and there it is. There is the measurement for angle between u and v. I'm going to see if I can move this a little bit. No, I can't. And change the color of this angle Veda just for clarification. So there you have it, Sandbox to play with vectors. I hope you appreciate this and make use of it in many other opportunities to play with vectors. Thanks for watching.